Hello everyone, I'm Parisa. Nice to meet you guys. So just for a little bit of context, I've been a business affairs lawyer and general problem solver for the last 20 years, the last 11 at ITV. And the number one thing it's taught me, if nothing else, is the importance of communication and considering your audience and getting people on board. So what I'm going to talk to you guys today is about 4 things: about attracting, retaining staff, engaging them, and then succeeding with your sustainability goals as a result of all of that. So I'm going to quickly go through these slides because I've obviously got a ridiculous number of them, which I won't be reading at length, but you can have a look at for the stats, etc. But what I'm going to be talking to you about is the issues that we have around recruitment and retention these days and how values are becoming so important to people, especially millennials and Gen Zs like us. So, environmental credentials, a new thing that HR and learning and development and recruiters need to be thinking about is that generally as a society we care more about the purpose and the value of the businesses that we work with. Overall, millennials, which are kind of a lot of us, which is 1980 to 2000, are particularly keen on making sure that the businesses they support and work with are genuinely doing good in some way, shape or form, whether that's the purpose of the business or whether that is the sort of genuine CSR tailored towards addressing climate change, etc., etc. There's a lot of stats over there. In 2016, around 2/3 of millennials would quit their job if they didn't find fulfillment or if they felt that their job had no ambition beyond profit. 9 in 10 millennials believe that the success of a company should be measured in terms of more than just financial performance. And I think one thing the pandemic has done for many of us is made us reassess what's important to us. Life is short, and should we all be about money? I know many of us are here because we are not, because we understand how important sustainability is. But certainly I myself have just quit my career of 20 years as of about 3 months ago, including the last 11 at ITV, because I believe in focusing all my time and energy on this. And I think there are a lot of men and women out there who are doing that now, who are reassessing what they're doing for a career and the types of businesses that they're working for and who they're promoting. It's become increasingly clear that businesses that prioritize sustainability are really reaping the rewards, and 1/3 of white-collar professionals would turn down a job if they didn't think it lined up with their values. And certainly that's where I am at, and a lot of people I'm talking to these days are in that situation, as well as Gen Zs as well. So if businesses want to be attractive and engage potential candidates, they need to make sure that their efforts on sustainability are communicated well, but are also seen as genuine and embedded in the business, rather than just a tick box exercise that they can sort of put on their ESG reporting or boast about to the public, because that sort of thoroughness and actual genuine concern for sustainability is becoming quite obvious to the people who work in those businesses. And so it's really important to consider what you're doing and how thoroughly you're embedding it. So the triple bottom line is becoming very important to people. Profit, people, and planet is becoming a mantra for a lot of businesses who want to make sure that not only are they reducing costs, not only are they meeting their ESG requirements, not only are they pleasing funders, but they're also improving their recruitment and retention because people are paying attention to that. So again, some more stats around 40% of workers are disappointed by the lack of effort and resource put into sustainability by their employer. Sometimes businesses have on the surface a very good sustainability credential. It may even be the purpose of that business to be sustainable, or they may have a large project around it. But the people who are on the ground, who are actually inside the business, if they don't see that being echoed by senior leadership, if they don't see that embedded in their CSR, in their volunteering, in their learning and development, if they don't see it as a normal part of culture in the business, they will feel that it is not a genuine project, perhaps that the feeling and the value is not genuinely there, and that it's being done as a tick box exercise or for commercial purposes only, which is kind of what you want to avoid. So helping staff discover an effective connection with what you're doing, so communicating what you're doing and making sure that what you're doing goes above and beyond sort of some sort of public PR stunt or sort of the necessary commercial needs of your business is really important, and making sure that's communicated both when you go out to universities to recruit amazing graduates, but also when you're dealing with recruiters, and that there's something on your website and that your employees are happy to boast about where they work and recommend it to other people. Because ultimately you invest a lot of money in recruiting people and you invest a lot of money in training people up. So when people leave after 10, 11 years with all that experience, you know, it's a huge loss to the business in terms of internal knowledge and obviously all the time and money that's wasted in terms of recruiting. So essentially, we've got to consider investing in internal sustainability training and comms to highlight your efforts and really support your employees. And when I say genuine values, genuine belief in sustainability, I mean that acknowledgement that, yes, okay, we're going to make our offices more sustainable, but actually, if we genuinely care about it, loads of people are working from home. So what are we doing for those home offices? How are we supporting people? And I'm not saying you should start paying their energy bills, but what I'm saying is if you can empower people to live more sustainably at home by having that knowledge, putting on those skills workshops, telling them where the funding is, giving them those sort of tips, but also the practical support they need to take those measures, then that shows that you're genuinely engaged with sustainability. It's not just a commercial thing, it's not just a PR thing. And I think there's another flip side to this. So I said about recruit and retain. The other element is about engage and succeed. So the other element is about helping staff to discover their own personal connection with sustainability. 75% of the British public say that they're worried about climate change. If we look at the British public, those 75%, they want the government to do something, they want businesses to do something, they want schools to do something. When it comes to doing something themselves, however, it's probably like 10% of people are actually taking the steps which go beyond the basics of whatever, recycling, litter picking, planting for pollinators or whatever, who are actually sort of walking more or reducing their meat or flying less, etc., etc. And part of that is about, yes, I'm worried about it. Yes, I expect people to have these values and to be delivering on it. But I don't personally get how it's relevant to me to the extent that I'm actually going to do something that causes me hassle. And so then we come to businesses setting their sustainability targets and then having to go to their employees and say, okay, I know you've done it like this for 20 years, but I want you to do it like this now. You know, look, we're all in it together. Let's do it like this. And actually, the way they see it, sorry, this is more of the Gen Zs and the millennials, but the way that they see it is that, there we go, is that this is another burden, this is another GDPR, this is another anti-bribery, this is another modern slavery. And I know it sounds horrific to say that those are a burden, but like, I've worked at the coalface trying to help people transform their businesses in this way, and I know it is seen like, I know it's a good thing, but it's a pain. I know it's a good thing, but I've always done it like this. I know it's a good thing, but it costs 5 extra minutes of extra time. And what you can do by helping people connect personally is empower them to realize that actually, okay, this is relevant to me because of, and it'll probably be children, it'll probably be health, it'll probably be money saving, it might be a personal interest in a specific area of the natural world, but whatever it is, suddenly they want to do it, and suddenly you're giving them an opportunity to collaborate and have impact at a far greater scale than they can ever manage at home. You're collaborating with them to help give them the skills and the knowledge to do what they can at home, but you're collaborating with them in the changes that you're asking them to support, and you're giving them the opportunity to have a far bigger impact than they can have at home. So HR's role and the benefit of considering ESG when it comes to people strategies, well, you know, we just got to make sure that there's meaningful sustainability engagement support for staff so they can connect personally, which in turn helps the business, as I've said. It needs to become a standard agenda item on regular meetings. At ITV, I was the project lead on the Green Team's sort of sustainability group at PLC level across the directors at the steering group. And one of the big things we were trying to do was make sure that, okay, this TV label SLT team meet once every 2 weeks. Is there a sustainability item on their agenda as a standard? No. let's talk to them and let's talk about adding that in. And when we have this team award once a month for that team or that team, is there anything around contribution to sustainability? No. Let's add that in, because it highlights that actually it's a normal part of our business. It's something we value, and it's something that we're encouraging. So again, sustainability needs to become a central theme in our CSR. Now, a lot of businesses already have existing ties to wonderful charities like Oxfam, Cancer Research Trust, homeless charities, lots of amazing, very established charities. However, what they don't have is that sort of route to supporting the sustainability side of their ESG through their CSR work. Traditionally, if they do support anyone, it's a massive sort of national project. It's not a UK, and often it's not even a UK-based project, but if it is, it's Friends of the Earth or Greenpeace or something like that. But actually what we need to do is start supporting UK-based, community-based sustainability charities who are setting up things like energy projects or lending projects or helping society generally get greener and more sustainable, so that they can in turn sort of support government efforts at infrastructure, support and encourage efforts at infrastructure and law, which will then in turn help any business that is trying to be more sustainable, and will give a market to those people as well. Because actually, if we normalise and popularise sustainable living, that means those of us who are making the effort to create sustainable living friendly goods and services and are trying to steer our companies in that direction know that there is a market then for what we are doing, because people will value it. Because from a community level, from a UK level, people are talking about it more and more. They're getting support on it more and more, and they're getting engaged in it more and more. And obviously, what you do with your own staff in terms of breeding that cultural change helps you reach your targets, but it also has a ripple effect in terms of their family, their friends, and how culture changes to support the sustainability efforts, products, services of your business. So yes, and the final thing is something that I experience, and you probably all do, is that in a lot of businesses you have these networks. So we have a diversity and inclusion BAME network, we have a diversity and inclusion women's network, we have a parents network, we have a network for people who are doing, I don't know, flexible working or disability or, sort of sexuality, anything. There's lots of different networks. And the thing is that sustainability is relevant to all those networks. And often it's it's not the women's groups, but it's the minority groups who are not engaging with this, because the communications that have been coming out of government, that have been coming out of charities, that have been coming out from any which way nationally, have traditionally been created by white middle class people who, have certain views. And it's no offense to them, but the money hasn't been spent on corporate, behavioural science, workshopping, research, all these sort of things that you would do as a business if you were selling goods and services, right? You would definitely see how you connect with that minority group or that socioeconomic group or that age, etc., etc. You would look at intersectionality. But if you look at the research that's been done and the tailoring of communications that's come out of the government, it's pretty much non-existent. And one message clearly doesn't fit all. And so it's really important to think about how you are engaging your staff in terms of how you plug into those networks who are very focused on supporting women or supporting the LGBTQT plus community, or all these different networks, and how they can be part of the solution as well in terms of ensuring that their members are aware of how it's relevant to them and how they can get engaged and how it benefits them. So in terms of both the cultural change thing internally for supporting your business and enhancing retention and recruitment, but also in terms of helping being part of that wave of change across society, you can support your staff and make sure that there's not silos around sustainability, that it becomes an embedded part of what the women's network is doing, what the parenting network is doing, what the disability network is doing, because it's relevant to all of them in completely different ways. There are different things that will interest them, but they are really important, that this is not some random thing that just some small group of the company cares about. It's important that this is a mainstream thing that every single different group of the company can find a way to connect with. And that may mean that you have people at board level or certain teams who just can't get it, and that you will have to invest that little bit more on one-to-one coaching or team training, et cetera, to get them on board. But it's absolutely well worth doing it, because also you've got the PR side, right? You don't want to be embarrassed when, the CFO says something around sustainability, or doesn't say something around sustainability, says something very offensive to sustainability, when you've put out publicly what the goals of your business are, what you're reporting on, et cetera, et cetera. So sustainability support, the benefits. I think they're pretty obvious. Attract and retain, improve employee well-being. That's another thing. So as we all know, sustainable living has a lot to do with spending less, because you're reducing your waste. You're reducing the waste of fuel consumption, food waste, water waste, buying lots of stuff waste, thinking more about reducing waste, mending, lending, et cetera, and that in turn supports your employees on cost of living and the mental stresses of that. It also helps your employees, obviously, with any eco-anxiety, and apparently over 60% of psychiatrists these days working with young people and children are hearing about eco-anxiety from the people that they're working with. So it's a big thing, certainly for young people, and I know in my generation there's a lot of people with it as well. So it's not just young people, it's oldies like me. But also, physically, we've got an obesity crisis, we've got a diabetes crisis in this country because of the obesity crisis. We've got a respiratory condition crisis in this country. We've got crisis with back problems, right? I mean, who isn't off work with back problems? Like, everybody. And actually, if we could get people thinking more about sustainability as a normal thing and embedding it into the way they travel and they move, you'd have more people walking, more people cycling, more people using public transport, which means less air pollution, less back problems, less obesity, less diabetes, less asthma. And that affects absences at work. The mental health stuff affects absences at work, guaranteed, because everyone is burnt out at the moment. And what they need to feel is that little bit of energy they're using it for the right thing. That's how I felt. I felt like I've got this much energy left in me. I've got children. I've got, I care about my job, but I really care about this. And actually now I have to put all my energy into that because it's so reduced. And if I'm going to stay in the business, I need to know that my energy is going to go 100%, or not 100%, 100% on supporting us moving in that direction at least. Even if my job is accounting or legal or whatever, I need to know that I'm part of something that is making things better significantly for my children, for my family. Because how many years have we got left? 7 years to halve carbon emissions. And if somebody says to me, China and India one more time, I will literally scream, because we know what they're making. They're making shit for us. So obviously that is not the issue. The issue is us, the way we live our lives, the way we run our businesses. And being involved in business in sustainability is hard, because often you're having to persuade boards who don't get it. But what I'm coming to next will hopefully help. I hope. But also you can lead the market, attract new investors and new customers, because a lot of people are interested in this. As I said, 75% of the population are worried about climate change. They want to see businesses and government doing more on this, basically. Plus, finally, cutting the costs. So if you can get your team engaged with your sustainability targets because they get it, because they're personally connected to it, because they feel a personal incentive to do more at home and then at work, it will mean that you can hit your targets much quicker and much cheaper. Less risk for PR disasters, but also that means generally you're reducing waste, right? You're reducing waste on energy, you're reducing waste on paper, you're reducing waste on plastic, but you're reducing waste overall, and that means that you're saving money in that way as well. So you're saving money to hit your targets, you're saving money across the business generally. So, taking action, and the last thing I forgot to say was that we all have targets that we have to hit and reports that we need to do and communications that we need to do. Those are around CSR, they're around ESG, they're around DE&I, they're around how we treat parents and flexibility, they're around how we deal with, sort of diversity and inclusion in all aspects of what we do. And all of this work will help you with that reporting, will help you with those internal communications, because you can tell your staff, this is what we're doing. Okay, we had to do this, but look at these other levels at which we're actually showing you we care about this, and that we're making sure it's as effective as possible. It's not greenwashing, it's not hot air, we care, and you're an integral part of it. So internal employee comms can be really used in that way to make sure that everyone feels that it's transparent, that they're achieving something through their efforts, and that it's worth doing more and hanging in there when they're so burnt out. Sorry. Right. Personal connection. So that brings me on to how we help the teams. So obviously, we have to set our net zero targets. Obviously, we need to look at how the senior leadership, the board, are incentivized to drive change. Now, if you're a sustainability person working in a FTSE 100, you know that one of the good things is that you have to report. If you're a business that is providing goods and services to one of those FTSE 100s, you know the good thing is that the procurement teams and lawyers of the FTSE 100s are changing their contracts. And they're changing their due diligence. So you need to show that actually you genuinely care about sustainability, that you're collecting the data around your energy use, your waste, et cetera, et cetera. So those businesses do have a clear commercial and legal incentive to do something about it. But sometimes even that isn't enough. So obviously setting KPI bonus schemes around sustainability is really key, and I'm sure that you're all aware that as soon as the CEO and the CFO's, bonuses start being tied into KPIs around sustainability, things trickle down a lot faster. Certainly they've done so in my experience. However, what you can't do is give money to every single person in a business. What you can do is help them understand how sustainability is relevant to them personally and how they benefit if the business makes these changes and if they help the business make these changes. So when I left ITV, I did two things. I looked at diversity and inclusion in communications and how we can get that personal connection for everyone across the UK. And when working on a project with Imperial College London and Bays and the charity Greener and Cleaner, which I'll come to in a bit at the end, it's the kind of project you guys should support. But also, I set up a sustainability consultancy, building on a lot of the work that I was doing at ITV. So what we found pretty quickly was that you need to help people get a personal connection. As I said, you can't financially incentivize everyone, and certainly if you tell people that's the law, they couldn't care. It's GDPR, right? So what you have to do is do workshops, interactive talks are the best, one-to-ones for SLT members, lunch and learns, et cetera, which help people have the time in a small group. So I'm talking about maximum 15 people really in these interactive talks, where they get to explore how sustainability is relevant to them with the speaker and share with each other their own experiences and what they're trying to do, et cetera, et cetera. They get to celebrate together what they are doing. They get to identify what is their main driver and what do they care about and why are they connecting with sustainability. And at the end of that, they go away and they have to look around their own part of the business and come back in 6 weeks and feedback about how they think that needs to change based on those 5 areas that we will have gone through, which is energy, waste, transport, finance. And there's one more. It might be biodiversity. I can't remember. But basically, the 5-6 main areas of sustainability you kind of touch on, so that on top of what they're already doing that you've celebrated, on top of them connecting with it so they really want to find a way that they can do something impactful at home, you're giving them guidance as to where they can start. They can look at the business through that lens of the 5 or 6 areas of sustainability, which you've asked them to, and come back and feedback in 6 weeks. And B, they're going to try something new from that list of ideas that you've given them that they can do or they've heard from their peers that their peers are doing. 6 weeks later, they come back, hopefully infused. You go through what they succeeded with, what were the blockers, and then you basically look at how you can sort of encourage them to feedback what they've seen in the business. Anything that they've seen in the business that the senior management hasn't fed back to the speaker, the trainer, you make a note of. And then you talk to them and you say, right, you're doing really well. It's really exciting how you've connected with this. I can see how passionate you are about this. Well done on this. It's exciting how you've done that. And then say, how would you like to increase your impact on addressing climate change by 500% with no cost to yourself? And just protect your family even more. And generally, they're going to say, yes, please. And then you're going to say, that's brilliant, because the business believes that it's really important that we address this issue too. And they want to collaborate with you so that together you can have an even bigger impact. And so that the hundreds of you, the thousands of you working together can have an even more enormous impact. So actually, the business is suggesting, yes, those points that you raised are really good. And 2 of those, they're thinking that maybe you guys can collaborate together to do X and Y on. There's one other thing, which is this. And if you do these 2 or 3 things slightly differently, it's a change, but we've got 7 years to deal with this crap. We've got to change. Then together, you're going to fight climate change on a scale completely different to what you can achieve for your kids or for your parents, or for whoever it is you care about at home? And generally, the response is, yes, please. And one of the other things that we've done, or that I experienced doing around, interesting, it doesn't have the slides that I had in there, but never mind. The other thing that we did at ITV to support this personal connection to sustainability was we created an app which basically had the sort of top 10 areas of sort of your life and what you could do in them, suggestions from the staff. And then the staff would be in teams depending on their department and sign up to it. And they would compete with each other each month to see who could have done, each member of staff looks at what they're doing at home, actually. So again, it's giving that home support. And it's, again, the peer-to-peer support. So hearing your colleagues saying that they're doing, I don't know, moving to a green energy provider or cycling to work or whatever is much more effective than the business saying, why don't you cycle to work? So that's why those interactive workshops, those interactive talks are so important, because they need to have the opportunity to hear what their colleagues are doing and what their colleagues are excited about or worried about, etc. So this app, basically, you can download, and I think that ITV have now agreed to license it out to other companies. So a couple of other companies have now licensed this app and are using it for their staff. And I think it's pretty cheap, actually. I think it's under £5,000 or something to license it. But basically, they're using that to sort of give ongoing support to their staff. But also, there's this thing that I'd started doing before I left, which is the idea of having catch-up brainstorms. So once a month, once a quarter, giving your staff, from the janitor to the CEO, the opportunity to turn up and ask a question and ask for advice, whether on their personal sustainability or things they've seen in the business, to celebrate things they've seen in the business or at home, and to ask for advice and to brainstorm and suggest changes. So personal connection, business boosting. So the business boosting one is the one I was talking about. So you turn up and you go, let's work together to have an even bigger impact. Now that you've personally connected with it, now that you get it, you don't see it as a burden but an opportunity. Let's work together with the business to have the biggest impact you and your family can have. So it's an opportunity to collaborate rather than a burden. So there are things like interactive talks, which are very tailored. So obviously one has to chat with the business and see what their priorities are for changes for that team or for that role, et cetera, and build that into there. And then obviously feedback as to what the employees have come up with as well in terms of changes. SLT one-to-one sessions, sometimes that's necessary because you need to bring a senior leadership member on board, and actually they need someone to sit down with them for 2 hours that is not their existing team, someone external, to chat it through with them and get them to come on board by identifying what they do care about rather than what they don't care about, and sort of getting them to connect with it in that way. And then again, lunch and learns and brainstorm. So as I said, ongoing support feedback. There's supposed to be a picture of the ITV app here, actually, sorry. But I can share that if anyone wants to grab me afterwards. And I can put you in touch with the team there because you've still got a very good relationship, obviously. But interactive sustainability brainstorms, as I said, it's designed to be hosted so anyone can come with a question about their home life, but also about the business. And gradually, obviously, the host kind of tries to get them to migrate to thinking more about the business because that's where they can have the biggest impact. They can spot the problems on the ground that the sustainability manager and senior leadership will not see, because they'll be like, oh, did you know we had 3 generators lined up for that event when we only needed 1? Or did you know we still get plastic bottles? Or did you know? And that's a good way to avoid PR issues as well, is have people on the ground actually feel that they're going to be heard if they raise the problems that they can see on the ground. And then obviously we'll get them to try and get more and more into the business, but also make them feel, which they are, supported in terms of their questions around their own sustainable living and their engagement with that at home. And then at the end of that, you sort of summarize the business takeaways and give that to the business so that that can be fed in each month or each quarter, so the business can then look at those things and say, actually, we didn't tell everyone we're already doing blah around food waste, or we didn't tell everyone, but we've actually changed the policy, or we're about to change the policy on flights, or whatever it is. And so it highlights to you, again, how important communication is. And if you can find a way of, like, twice a year even, taking one of those points that a member of the team has raised and actually going, you know what, you raised these in the brainstorms, and we have changed things in the business as a result of your feedback. That massively boosts engagement with these things. It massively makes people feel heard and an integral part of something that's sustainable and that is moving in the right direction. So That's really important. Reviewing learning and development offered, reviewing the team building and social offering for employees. So think about, I mean, we're doing litter picking with Bank of America, for example, with the charity. But I mean, I personally don't think that's the best thing to be doing, but we're also going to be doing some workshops on mending and sewing and composting with some other businesses. But like, there's lots of different charities out there who do lots of wonderful sustainable skills courses and workshops and things that you can support the charity while also giving your employees really great team building experiences, or sort of learning and development experiences, or social experiences. But learning and development in-house, obviously, lunch and learns, talks, they can be about going green at Christmas, they can be Halloween focused, they can be around the days of the month, days of the year that are important, like Zero Waste Week or World Car Free Day, etc., etc. So those are just some examples of the type of guest speaker talks, workshops and articles that you can think about. And yeah, basically just embedding sustainability in every part of what you do. Obviously, even when it comes to pensions, if you're able to highlight there that the option is there for people to opt in, that's great, into a more ethical, sustainable fund for their pension, that's great. Even better if you can find a way to make it the norm that they have to opt out of and opt into fossil fuels, that would be even better. But anyway, maybe that's one for another 2 years' time or something. But 7 years isn't long. So basically, it's important to update the organisations and causes that your CSR funds and volunteering programmes are supporting. So it shows that your company genuinely grasps the timescales of climate change, and it's not just a nod to it. As I said, UK community sustainability projects with national implications are a great one to consider, as are those sort of apps that help employees. So quickly, I will tell you about our community sustainability hubs pilot for the UK. So we're working at creating community sustainability support hubs for the public, but based in really big, popular, mainstream shopping centres. So the idea is to popularise and normalise sustainable living, and done up to a level where it looks polished, where it doesn't look like the weirdo poor cousin of Waterstones or whatever's next to it kind of thing. Because it needs to not be a fringe thing, it needs to be a popular, normalised thing for the community, somewhere they know they can go for support, for advice from their peers, because it's 70% run by volunteers. We have a small skeleton staff, and somewhere that they can go to learn the skills that they're being told to use, whether that's sewing on a button, or whether that's composting, or insulating their homes, or repairing a puncture. We're also the first time that there's a mainstream setting for the Library of Things, which hopefully you know what that is, but it's basically a load of kiosks with a load of tools and equipments like PAs and carpet cleaners and stuff, so that people can come and borrow it rather than buy it, and they return it. And it's run by the amazing charity, the Library of Things, who have ones in libraries all over London, and they're moving out further in London. So what we're creating is we're testing this hub, and we're working with Imperial College London and Bayes on stage 1. And we're looking for partners for stage 2 to conduct research around what language you use, what media you use, what initial activities you use, and what is the gateway drug to sustainability for different groups and different demographics in the community. Because at the moment, it's 70% white middle class people who are engaging with sustainable living, unfortunately. And actually, it's people from lower socioeconomic groups, from ethnic minority backgrounds, from disabled backgrounds, who will be hit the most by climate change in the UK, who are already being hit the most by cost of living prices, by diabetes, by many other things, by asthma, by air pollution. But they're also least likely to feel represented in the communications that are going out from government, even from brands, and certainly from the third sector. So what we're doing is recognising that the government isn't going to fund that because there's no votes in it, that charities don't have the money to fund that, that academia doesn't have the money to fund that. All the funding systems are completely insane. They're tiny bits of money and they all fight over it, so they don't collaborate, they don't empower each other. And the idea is we do this piece of research so we can evolve the hub to the most inclusive, accessible way of helping the public as possible. So the blueprint can be used to empower charities and shopping centres and councils across the country to roll these out, and we work with Bayes on that. They want us to do it franchise style. But also at the same time, that research is being used not only to create a blueprint which has behavioural science and diversity at the heart of it, but also to create a communications and support report around inclusivity and accessibility and sustainable living, acknowledging the fact that I may want to reach you about fuel poverty, but I know know from this research that the only way to get you involved in sustainable living conversations is to start off talking about the air quality and the lung capacity of your kids, or to start you off on a craft workshop about making reusable gift bags for Christmas. And actually being able to do it as a 360, as we are as a charity, a one-stop shop on sustainability, means that we've got incredibly valuable data, which means that every charity that is doing anything to do with community, sustainability, biodiversity, etc., can be empowered to reach their members better and to reach new groups and demographics, as well as empowering the government to reach people properly. And hopefully our partners get access to some of that data earlier. So there's one benefit amongst many. But anyway, that's just one project. There are many projects out there. I hope you'll consider supporting them. And if you've got any questions, come and ask me afterwards, I guess, or here. I don't know if we have time. Sorry. I could talk for Britain.
There is nothing ever wrong with passion, and we like the passion. I'm afraid we aren't going to have time for any questions off the back of that. But
sorry.
Are you about still?
Yes, I'm going to literally hang out there. So
lovely stuff. Well, that's probably your best option. And otherwise, we are at lunch until 2:15 when we have our next panel on ethical investment. But for the meantime, round of applause for Parisa, please.
Thank you. Thank you.